Okay, so this is the Pirates to Peacekeepers conflict resolution group. This is a really fun one. So each week you're starting with an outline. So here is week one, introduction. So because it's week one, you want to allow a little more time in the beginning to establish group rules and explain how to do a feelings check, because this is what you'll be doing each week. Then you're going to have a couple icebreakers and an activity and journal. But in addition to that, you will be doing a self-assessment because this is the very first week. So you'll do a self-assessment the very first week and the last week. So the group rules are something you want to come up with together as a group. If you want to, you can just use this sample set, but I recommend having in mind a few rules that you want the students to use, but then discussing their own rules as well. So ask the kids, what do you think some good rules for our group would be? And you may need to direct and guide them a little bit. So for example, if they say, no hitting, and then someone else will say, no kicking. This usually happens, especially with the little ones. They'll kind of encourage each other, know this, know that, know that. I like to turn the language into what we want them to do instead of what we do not want them to do. So if they say, no kicking, no hitting, you can say, yes, those are good ones. That would go under be respectful and be kind. Of course, I always like to include participation and confidentiality and fun. And then a feelings check. So here is a feelings check poster that the kids can use, so you can print this out and hang it up or pass it around so they can identify which feeling is most like how they're feeling that day. You want to model the following format for them. So you want to say, today I am feeling excited because my favorite movie is coming to theaters, or something like that. So you want to use a consistent sentence structure. That way they know how to do it and you can model this for them. And then you can always use a scale of 1 to 10 if students are really struggling, but usually with the visual they're able to at least point to how they're feeling. I also encourage students not to say things like, I'm feeling fine or good. Really encourage them to use an emotions word. And then these are the icebreaker instructions. So you're going to have icebreakers every week. And this is just like one place where you can see all the icebreakers. So I'll be referring back to this page. But for the first week, if you refer back to your outline, it says 2 truths and a tale and the Pirates matching game are the icebreakers. So 2 truths and a tale is where they're going to share 2 true statements and 1 false statement about themselves in a random order, and the rest of the group tries to guess which statement is false. So this icebreaker is just for fun to get to know each other. And then the matching game is a memory type game. So you're going to cut out these cards, put them all face down, and then students are trying to find pairs. So if they successfully find a match, they keep those cards and you play until all the cards are gone and all the matches have been found. And then whoever has the most wins. So some of these are just cute visuals, and then some are actual facts here, like pirates hurt other people's feelings, peacekeepers help other people feel better. So the whole theme of this group is that we're trying to change students from being pirates to being peacekeepers as they learn to resolve conflicts. And then here is their self-assessment. So a few simple questions. So a few ways you can do this. You can pass these out and have students do them independently, or if you have a lot of emerging readers, you can read these out loud and then have students circle yes or no. And you're going to do the exact same one during the last session as well. And then the activity for this week is a craft. So you're going to cut out these guys, and they are little flip books, and you're going to write on the 3 parts of their body how these people act. So here we have a pirate and we have a peacekeeper. So for example, under each flap is going to indicate a different part of their body. So the top flap is the head. So you're going to write like how a pirate would think versus how a peacekeeper would think. And then the middle one is how they would feel. So it's like their heart. So you're going to write how a pirate would feel versus how a peacekeeper would feel. And then the bottom one is their feet. So these are actions. So what a pirate would do versus what a peacekeeper would do. So for example, a pirate thinks he can only solve a problem by fighting, where a peacekeeper thinks he can solve a problem by talking it out. Or a pirate feels really angry when someone says something mean to him, so he hits them. Or a peacekeeper feels angry, so they ask for help. And then a pirate kick someone when they're upset, and a peacekeeper walks to get help. Something like that. So you're dividing up their thoughts, feelings, and actions by using the first flap, second flap, and third flap. And they're in black and white too. And this entire group you can make a interactive notebook for. So for example, you could cut those out, and instead of keeping all the activities separate, you could have them in a notebook, and then the kids are adding all the paper there. So after the group, they have this cool interactive notebook to take home. So then there is a simple journal reflection for them to complete. So week 2, you're going to start the same way with the group rules and the feelings check, and then you'll have your icebreaker, activity, and journal. So the icebreaker for this one is a discussion dice. So you're going to print this out and fold it, make a cute die, and the students are going to take turns tossing it and answering the question that it lands on. So that's the icebreaker. And then here is that interactive notebook I was referring to earlier. There's some visuals of what it would look like. If you wanted to get the activities, you can paste them in the notebook. So this is a foldable. This is the activity where they're determining their high conflict times. So this is divided between home, school, friends, and then other. And students are going to write conflicts that they have during those times, and then other conflicts under the flap. So you can see some examples here, like I fight with my sister at home over which TV show to watch. So that's one they would put into the home category. Or I argue with my friends during recess over the kickball rules. So they're going to share these, and then other group members are going to offer suggestions. So you could put them in pairs if you have a bigger group, or just as a whole group, they could take turns saying when they have a high conflict time, and then the other students can try to offer a suggestion. So there's a few different formats here. You can do a little flip grid or the pockets. And there's another flip book. So you can have students choose which one. Again, I'll go back to the visuals here in the bottom left. You can have students choose which one they want to use in their notebook. So everyone can kind of do something different. And then they have a second journal reflection on how they can avoid one of their high conflict times. Okay, week 3. So you have your group rules and your feelings check. And then icebreaker for this one is a discussion card game. So those are the discussion cards you're going to print and cut out. But if you go back here to the icebreakers, the discussion card game indicates that you're going to also need a deck of playing cards. So students are going to take turns drawing a card from the deck and a discussion card. So if it's an odd number, they're asking someone to their left the question. If it's an even number, they themselves are answering the questions. And if it's a face card or an ace, everyone's answering the question. So that's just a fun way to determine who will answer these discussion cards. And then this is their activity. So this is a fun craft. So you will need some paper lunch bags, and then you can have some optional magazines if you want to do it a little extra. But basically you're folding the bags a third of the way down, and then students can either draw their own face on there, or you can cut out one of these. So I have black and white ones they can color, or you can use the colored versions. And then they're acting like this bag is their head or their thoughts. So they're opening up the bag, and they're going to fill it with things that are part of the reasons why they have conflicts. So why do you think you're having a conflict with your friends? Why do you think you're arguing with your sibling? Why do you think this is happening at school? So they can draw their own things and put them in there. They could cut out things from magazines, or they could actually put actual tangible things in there. So there's a variety of ways you can do this activity, depending on the materials and time that you have. And then they're going to present their heads to the group. So for example, if they're feeling angry because they're losing something, they could put a picture of a soccer ball in there that they cut out, or one that they draw. And then the journal reflection for that one is, have you ever thought about why you have conflict? So they now know what a conflict is, but in this session they're trying to determine the why behind it. And then week 4, so this is a choices week, so they're learning coping strategies and positive choices that they can use when they're faced with the conflict. So you're going to start the group the exact same way, and then the icebreaker for this one is a sides of the room activity. So you'll head back to your icebreaker sheet to find out exactly what to do for that one. And you see here, they're going to start in the middle of the room, and they switch to different sides based on answers to the following questions. So if their answer is yes, they go to the right side of the room. If it's no, they go to the left side. So this is just a fun way for them to get up and moving. And some of these are conflict resolution based, and some of these are just fun get to know you ones. So there's ones like I have a pet, or I love reading, chocolate's my favorite flavor of ice cream. But then there's also ones that say, I had a conflict with another student recently. I ask people to stop if they're bothering me. I feel better if I wait and cool off. So it's a mix of that week's theme plus just fun get to know you activities. And then for the main activity, after you do the sides of the room icebreaker, this is the craft interactive notebook component part. This is where students will be identifying their wheel of choices. So you're going to review all the choices as a group, and then they're picking their top 5 and gluing them on their wheel. So you want to keep this, have like enough per person. So you're going to print this page 1 per person, so they get to choose their top 5. So there's 8 choices here. They're going to paste them on the wheel, and then you can talk about why they chose those. So why they like, one person might prefer to wait and cool off, or someone else might prefer to talk about it. So just depending on different personalities, they can share which ones they want to use the best. Then they have a journal reflection where they can talk about why they thought, which coping strategies they're going to use the most, and then which ones they think may be a bit of a challenge. So for example, if they think walking away to cool off is going to be a challenge for them, they can share that with you, and then you can help them problem solve that by saying they could come to you for help, or maybe look for a recess duty or something like that. Week 5, you're starting the exact same way, and this icebreaker is a conflict starter sort. So this is where they're going to sort these into 2 piles. Again, the specific detailed instructions are on that icebreaker page, but you can sort these into 2 buckets or 2 bags. But they're going to sort the activity or the action to determine if it's something that would start a conflict or stop a conflict, or prevent a conflict rather. So name calling or blaming others, those things are likely starting it. Being kind is not, or walking away is not. And then for the main activity, this one is a role play. So if you have a small group, you can just do it with all the group members, but if you have a larger group, you want to divide kids into pairs or groups of 3, and they're going to draw a scenario card and then act it out, and then they're going to choose how they would respond by using a positive choice from their wheel of choices. So your cousin calls you a mean name, they could talk it out, or maybe they walk away, something like that. So these are fun ones. Give them a few minutes to read the card and kind of practice their skit, and then you can take turns performing them, and then be sure to discuss them afterwards as well. Then you have journal reflection 5. And then week 6, this one is all about I statements. So for the icebreaker, they're making a foldable, and this is one that they can put in their interactive notebook. So you're going to review an I statement format. So you're saying, I feel when you, because next time. So I feel angry when you ignore me because it hurts my feelings. Next time, please talk to me, or please tell me what's going on. So they're going to write under the flaps an example of an I statement, and then they can glue it on their paper. And then this one has a fun board game for the activity. So they're going to roll the die and move that many spaces. If they land on a symbol, then they're going to answer the corresponding card. So there's some cards where they have to change the you statement to an I statement. So for example, instead of saying, you're being mean, they can change it to, I feel sad when you say mean things because it hurts my feelings. Next time, please be kind. So they're going to practice that format that you went over to change those. And then walk the plank. So these cards are just an example of a not ideal way to resolve a conflict, so then they have to move back 4 spaces. And then act it out. Again, this is a little role play thing. They can act out the conflict that it lists, and then they're going to use an I statement as a solution. So for example, your friends are ignoring you during lunch. So you can have 2 students, and one's acting like they're getting ignored, and then she's going to use an I statement to say how she would solve that. So I feel angry when you ignore me during lunch because I thought we were going to sit together. Next time, please tell me you don't want to sit with me, or next time, let's sit together. And then they use the journal reflection to talk about if they think I statements are going to be a good coping strategy for them to use. So for this one, the I statements can be a little tough at first. They require a lot of repetition, so I recommend writing it on the board so students can see that format, the fill in the blank, and you can kind of direct them what to say. And the more practice, the easier it will get. And then week 7, so this one, they're going to start with some charades. That is the icebreaker. So they're going to take turns drawing a card, and then they're acting out the conflict resolution strategies. So for example, walk away. If someone, that's an easy one. If someone drew that one, they would start walking. They're not using words, just actions, and the rest of the group would guess, oh, walking away. So just a fun charades game. And then for the interactive notebook portion, this is a worksheet they can do that is a treasure map to conflict resolution. So they're writing examples of how they would use the following tools to help them solve problems. So for example, the first clue says use your head, try to stop and think before acting. And they'll say, I stopped and thought about my actions before I kicked someone at recess, or something like that. And then number 2, don't use your words like a sword, they can hurt others. So they would say that they decided to use an I statement instead of saying mean words. So there's 4 clues that they're going to do. And again, this is something they can do independently, and you're kind of walking around monitoring it, and then when everyone's finished, allow some time at the end of the group to discuss. And then journal 7, you want them to think back to a recent conflict they had and then how they would resolve it. And then week 8, so this is the final week, you're going to start with the group rules and feelings check. This icebreaker, there's actually a video that you're going to watch, so there's a link in the icebreaker guide, and then you're going to have kids take turns answering the questions to discuss the video. So they're going to talk about identifying the conflict in the video, how it was solved, if there's a better solution, have they ever had a conflict like this. It's a really cute video. And then for the activity, this one's called the fishbowl. So you're going to put students in a circle and then have 2 students in the middle of the circle. So you're going to have 2 empty chairs in the middle of the circle, and then ask 2 students to volunteer, and you're going to start a discussion about conflict resolution, and perhaps it's even something that some group members have had, so they could volunteer an actual conflict. That's probably most effective for this activity. And then the kids in the middle take turns speaking, and the students in the outside chairs can only listen. So the 2 in the middle are in the fishbowl, and everyone else is outside the fishbowl, just kind of watching. You're kind of watching them resolve the conflict, and then if they want to speak, they can tap the person in the center to take their spot. So you want to be sure to come up with some ground rules for this so everyone feels respected, and that you're not kind of like interrupting each other. But this is a way that the group members can analyze their own situations and share helpful advice with their peers. So for example, if 2 group members are having a argument about, there's a third person who's not in the group who's a friend, and they're having a hard time like sharing because there's a group of 3 of them. You could have those 2 in the middle, and then they're trying to work it out, but maybe, it's their actual conflict, so they may be having a hard time viewing it objectively. That's where someone who's outside the fishbowl can tap them and come in and kind of speak on their behalf or help them resolve the conflict. So it's a really cool activity. Again, the younger the kids are, the more like guidance you're going to have to do to facilitate this one. And if it's too personal or too uncomfortable for kids to use their own scenarios, then you can come up with some examples. And then journal reflection 8 is their last one. So they're going to share how they can help others resolve conflicts. So just like in the fishbowl, the kids on the outside are helping the kids on the inside solve the problem. And then they're going to do a general reflection question on how they've changed since the beginning of the group. And then they end it with a self-assessment. Be sure to get their names and dates on these so you can compare how their answers have changed since the original self-assessment to see where they have grown. Okay, that's it for this one. So this is the expected behavior social skills card game. So this one takes a little bit of explaining, but once you get the hang of it, it is so much fun and the kids love it. So it's played similarly to the game Apples to Apples or even Cards Against Humanity, any of those card type games where one person is reading responses from other players and choosing which one they think makes the most sense. So here are the directions, but I'll give you a breakdown as well. But each student who's playing is going to have 4 response cards. So there's 2 types of cards. There's scenario cards and response cards. So each student playing is going to have 4 response cards. And then students are going to take turns flipping over the big scenario card. So one student's going to flip over the scenario card, read it out loud to the group. And then the other students are going to hold their 4 response cards. They're holding them privately so only they can see them. And they're choosing the one that best makes sense as an expected behavior. Now, the game is funny, and some of the cards don't make sense at all for the scenario, so it can be a little silly, and that's what kind of makes it fun. And the student with the scenario card is going to read out loud all of the responses that were turned in and select which one is best for the situation. And then, whichever one they select, whoever submitted that one wins that round. So they're going to keep those cards in their hands at all time. 4, so they're going to, once they play a card, grab another one for the pile, so they always have 4 in their hand at all times. And the first player who wins 3 big scenario cards, so remember that's the person whose response was selected. If they have them 3 times, then they win the game. So we'll take a look at them. So these are the scenario cards. So for example, there was one that says you were at the movies with friends. And then you'll see the response cards. So the students would have 4 of these. So let's just take a look, maybe the first 4 across the top. So if a student has these 4 and they have to pick which one best goes with you're at the movies with your friends, well, in this case, probably smile or laugh out loud. But let's say they go with smile. So they're submitting that one. But then another student, let's say they have the next row and none of them really make sense because you don't want to have a nice conversation, lay on the floor. Maybe they're going to submit hug because they're like, well, we could hug our friends at the movies. So they submit that one, and then the student who has the big card will choose, and they will likely choose smile because that is a better expected behavior. And this is where you can have a conversation about why some of these behaviors are expected and why some are unexpected or inappropriate for the situation. So again, it gets kind of silly, and there's quite a few different scenario cards here, and then even more response cards. So sometimes the students will have a silly one, but most of the time, because they get to choose one of 4, they'll have something that makes sense, and the one student can read them all and then be a little subjective and choose which one they think is the best expected behavior. Okay, that's all for that game.